wants to change the world? Who thinks that they can? I hope it's all of you. Lives of great men all remind us that we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time. Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing, shall take heart again. H.W. Longfellow. I grew up with this poem, and it became a song for my conscience, humming consistently in my head. Hello, my name is Poulomi Paavini, and I am a lawyer, an author, an activist, a mother to 12 dogs, 3 cows, and 2 goats. And recently I was named in the Forbes 30 under 30. When I was invited to speak here, I was torn on what to say. I started my journey to raise awareness about the issues of orphan children in India, and that is something that I really wanted to talk about. But then I realized that I was talking to some of the brightest minds in the country. So maybe if I spoke about the lessons that I had learned in my journey, together we could inspire more change. We are all here because someone somewhere has fought for us. Whether it was girls that fought for equality and education, whether it was activists that fought for the abolition of the caste system, or whether it was our freedom fighters fighting for sovereignty. We stand here on the toils and the shoulders of our ancestors. Ancestors that chose to make the world a slightly better place than what they found it. And that is a decision I feel we must take, and we must take it every day. It is not a difficult decision to take, I assure you. My story started very simply. My mother took me to an orphanage when I was a child. I became friends with the children there. And in my innocence, I was unaware of the differences in our opportunities or in our situations. Years later, I went to college. One of the girls from the orphanage contacted me with a very simple request. She asked me if she wanted to go to college too, and I started looking for funding for her. And then I realized there was none. There was no scholarship, no scheme, no available funding for her to go to college. Our country, India, was condemning its orphan children, no matter how bright they were, no matter how smart they were, no matter how hard they worked, no matter what they scored, no matter what they dreamt, to a life of a blue-collar job, at best, an absolute penury for the rest. The injustice fueled me, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes, a passion, a feeling so strong that you cannot fight against it. It can be for something as small as making sure that the garbage outside your house reaches its correct destination, or it can be for something as big as tackling climate change. Passion of young people, passion of the youth has driven change since eternity. Whether it was Greta, whether it is Malala, it is young people who are driving change today. So remember, find your passion, and no passion is too small or too big to create change. I remember that when I started researching my book, the first fact that I came across was that there were 20 million orphan children in India. More orphan children in India than the population of Sri Lanka. I was overwhelmed. The more I read, that less than 0.5% of them were in orphanages, that less than 1 lakh were covered in government schemes, the more scared I became. This problem seemed so large, and I was such a small person. How could I tackle it? But I pushed through. I thought even if I couldn't tackle the whole problem, maybe I could change it a little bit. And that's the second lesson I learned. That there will be fear, there will be doubt, there will be reconsideration. The problems that you may want to tackle will be large, will be difficult, and seemingly impossible. But do not lose heart, push through. Because remember, even if you change a little is a lot more than nothing. I was working when I wrote my book. Orphans was a passion project for me and still is. I'm often asked, how do you find time for this? But the thing is, we all find time for the things we enjoy, whether it is watching Netflix, whether it is hanging out with our friends, whether it is traveling. So remember to find something that you enjoy. Find your own passion, because no one else's passion will drive you. Know that you will always be busy. Today you have college, you have classes, you have extracurriculars, you have friends. Tomorrow you will have careers and families. But you will always find time for your passions. So make changing the world a passion of yours. Students come and ask me one more thing. They say, we have very little resources and very little time. What can we do for orphan children? The answer is very simple, everything. You can go to an orphanage once a month, once in 2 months. By simply going to an orphanage, you can make sure that the children have beds to sleep on, or even warm socks for the winter. You can go and give them company. Sometimes all they need is a friendly ear and some guidance. Sometimes you don't even need to go there. Sometimes when you're walking or you're driving and a child comes and begs you for alms, just stop and have a conversation. Ask them if they're an orphan. Ask them if they're going to school. If they're not, report them to the nearest orphanage or the nearest police station, or just call the Childline helpline. Your 5 minutes could change their life. So remember, to change the world, you do not need months or days or hours. Sometimes minutes are enough. The most important lesson that I learned in my journey is that most people are kind and are willing to help. We are often shown a very pessimistic view of the world, a very jaded view of the world, but that is not true. The problem is more a lack of awareness. I'm sure most of you do not know that orphan children are not included in the Right to Education Act. That 1 in 4 districts in our country doesn't have a single orphanage. Orphan children are often put in hospitals, or even worse, in jails for under 18 children. But now that you know, some of you will feel very bad about it. Some of you will feel very passionate about changing it. This cause will become larger. It will become amplified simply because I had the opportunity to talk to you today. So remember, talk about your passion, raise awareness, ask for help, ask the authorities for help, no matter how daunting that may seem. I asked for the union budget for orphan children to be increased. The Supreme Court sent a notice and the union budget was doubled. I asked for reservation and 3 states have given it, including Uttarakhand, which is given 5%. There is still a long way to go, but I know if I hadn't started asking, nothing would have happened. So remember, when you ask if nothing happens, that's okay. But if something has to happen, it will only happen if you ask. And that brings us to the last lesson that I have learned. Know that you will fail, and fail more often than you will succeed. When I started writing my book, I was visiting orphanages and I went to over 100. Most of them looked at me with suspicion. Some of them even rebuffed me, even though I was trying to help. Even after writing my book, I met countless politicians, policymakers, influencers. Even if they were willing to help, they were unable to. And that made me very disheartened. I was very forlorn. It took me 3 years after I wrote my book to file my PIL. Since then, I have again met countless people, from students to policymakers. There have been victories. We have got reservation in 3 states. In 2 states, orphan children have been included in the Right to Education Act. We have got policy changes in 1 state. However, for each victory, there have been countless letters and countless meetings which were futile or negative. For everything that is done, there are still 10 things left to do. Failure is part of changing the world. To accept change is difficult. To initiate it is onerous. Our world, the systems are in an inertia, and to move a nearly immovable object, you need a nearly immeasurable force. But you can be that immeasurable force. All you need is a little bit of passion. As John Lennon very rightly sung, start and one day the world will join you. In my small cause too, I like to remind people that there may be 20 million orphan children in India, but there's still 120 million citizens of India. If each one of us takes care of just one more of us, then everybody would be taken care of. I appeal to you. Orphans have been ignored in policy making because they are not a vote bank. But we are. We have a voice. They don't. Together, we can raise our voice, be loud enough, be strong enough, so that the system listens to them and the system changes for them. The last thing that I want to say to you is what has kept me going all throughout. Remember that you may not be able to change the world, but for one child, or one person, or one animal, or one street, you can always change their world. Thank you.